What controls plant growth? Pruning, when, why, and how to do it. That is what we're going to cover on this. So the first thing I want to talk about are some of the hormones that are found in plants. You're like, hormones? What? Plants have hormones? Yes, they do. So, and these hormones control growth. So auxin is produced at the stem, the meristems of the plant. So that means where it's growing out from the top and from the sides, and it causes the cells to get longer, right? So that's how plant cells get bigger, right? They get longer. Gibberellins promote the elongation between nodes on a plant, and a node is where the leaf comes. So it elongates the space between like where a bud or a leaf or a flower node is going to be. And then cytokines are in the root meristem, so they're down in the bottom, and those things move with water going through the system. So let's see kind of like what does that look like when you manipulate a plant. So here's the top of the plant. So auxins are up at the top, and they move down, and cytokines are flowing up. And basically, the way that this works is as long as you have this like topmost growing point of the plant, that's the dominant bud, and it's producing auxin, and it basically prevents the buds from the side from growing faster and getting bigger, right? So this controls what's happening down below it. All right. So if you take off the top, then it now the cytokines that are coming up from the roots are still coming up, and basically it goes, whoa, wait a minute, we don't have an apical bud anymore. So now we can put our energy into these side buds. So then this will grow bigger, and now you'll have a new dominant bud, right? So you'll have a new apical bud that's then going to influence what is below this. And one of the reasons why this is important is because if you are trying to prune a plant, shape it for growth, where and how you remove a dominant bud, a dominant shoot, is really going to influence what happens in below it. Okay. So some pruning rules. Well, the very first thing is choose your plant first before you plant it, because yeah, you don't want to try and make something that's going to be a 12-foot tall plant be 4 feet. Like, they don't like that. It's hard on the plant. Prune only what you need to. Don't give something a haircut across the top. That's terrible. And you really want to prune when it's dormant. So like right now is a good time to clean up and do pruning. You don't really want to do it later, and this is because it affects the energy level of the plant. If you prune it when it's got lots of leaves and lots of buds, the plant is trying to put its energy into those leaves and buds, and now you've wounded it, and so it's going to change its growth pattern. So right now is a really good time to prune and trim things on plants. Pruning is removing things that are dead and dying, or poorly attached, or that cross each other, or it's getting rid of something that's a safety hazard. And it's also a way to encourage new growth. So the plants that you're going to get to take home to put in your hydroponics, you can manipulate how something like that grows based on where you pinch the new growth. And we'll talk about that more as we go along. This is showing you when you cut something, you want to cut it flush with the trunk. You really don't want to rip into the bark, because when you do that, it's kind of like, it's like making a raggedy little place. It's harder for the plant to recover from that. And you don't want to cut too far into the trunk, right? You want to cut like right flush with it. So like that's flush, that's flush. So the reason why you would do this is because they look beautiful and they can live longer and they can produce more. So this is important. Let me go back. Um, you don't want to prune something, right? This is horrible. Somebody's chopped the center of this tree out around this power line. And that's just, and you can actually see this all over Seattle. And then this is something where they've pruned the bottom edges off and you've got this growing in this little umbrella shape. The problem is underneath this, there's like an overabundance of branches, which if they're buried underneath this and this just got green on the outside, then those are never going to grow. I actually had a neighbor who had two willows in their yard that were cut like this, and they finally died because you can't withstand that. Like it's just hard on the plant. Topping trees and tipping trees. So topping is when you remove the apical meristem, the very topmost branch, right? So you cut off that part. And tipping is when you just cut off the little edges. These things here where you've got like these little bunches of, like, they're called water sprouts. Witch fingers or water sprouts. That's because when you chop off the end, right now, any place that you've got a bud below that, those cytokines are rushing in and making it grow branches there. So instead of just like growing one nice long branch, now you've got like all these little confused branches at the end. Okay. One of the things you really want to do is if it's under 5 centimeters across in your diameter, you can take it off. If it's between 5 and 10, you really want to look and see, is that okay? And then if it's bigger than that, you better really like, maybe the only reason why you're cutting it off is because it's rotten. It's going to fall on something. So cutting branches, we kind of looked at this earlier. This is a little bit better, better picture, right? So you don't want to leave a little stub. You really don't want to rip your bark, and a flush cut is going to actually let it like heal over properly, because the plant will heal over when you cut a branch off. So don't leave a little stub. So that's bad. It makes it weak. So here's one where it's showing you there's a little node, a little leaf node. So you can cut it just above that. You don't want to go too crazy on your angle, right? Because it might dry it out. And then if you cut it on the top flat, it makes it so that water can pool up here, and that's going to make it easier for you to end up having rot get into the plant. Heading versus thinning. So here's one where they've cut it just above a branch, and so you're trying to get some new growth. Thinning is, I am actually just did this to my apple trees so that I could get like the branch that was growing here. I wanted to keep, and I wanted to get rid of this branch, and so it made it so that it's now getting, it's now got, making some new branches in other places. And I can show you this on my apple tree on Friday. Heading stimulates your bud growth closest to where you get it cut. And it's going to determine then like what direction it'll grow. So if you're trying to prune a plant to be a certain kind of, like, make it easy to harvest like an apple tree, then you can do that to like really make it so the tree has a nice shape. It's when you're pruning something, the goal of it should be that when it like starts putting out leaves after you've pruned it, it should basically not look like you've really messed with it very much. The sign of somebody who's really good at pruning is that the plant looks very natural, and the way that the growth pattern of it looks like it doesn't look weird. Thinning branches is all about removing branches at their where they're attached. And so sometimes you can do this if you've got a plant that's like really got a lot of branches, and you can go in and thin a little bit of the branches out so that it has a little bit more airflow. It helps prevent disease, all of those things. And we're done.